Please welcome your host, CBI Chief Campaigns Director, Simon Colassie-Aldridge.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the CBI's Annual Conference 2022 here in Birmingham. Whether you are in the room or you're joining us online, it is so great to have you. I'm genuinely excited. I might say that quite a lot. It's fantastic to see so many of you in the room here today for what I promise is going to be a brilliant couple of days. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm Simon Colassie-Aldridge, Chief Campaign Director at the CBI. And I'm going to be spending the next 2 days with you as your conference host, which, given what my job is slightly more than I've managed to say to my family at all in the last few months. So normally my days are spent trying to work out what the goings-on in Westminster mean for all of you in the room. But in these times of change, today, I thought I'd give hosting a go. And I have already decided to all the broadcasters in the room that I will not be giving up my day job. I'm genuinely excited, as I said, I am excited, about my first CBI annual conference and the first we've done in person for 3 whole years. And I asked the team before I came here for a little bit of advice as to how am I going to get through this? And they said, plenty of caffeine, I have done that. Comfy shoes, done that. And I came up with my own, which is perhaps some slightly more predictable headlines than we had last year. And I was told that this was going to be big, but I really wasn't expecting this. And my ask of all of you is that you make the most of the next 2 days and you really enjoy yourselves. And of course, none of this would be possible without the support of our strategic partners, Accenture and Hayes. So I'm going to ask you all to give them a big round of applause. So we have put together a very packed agenda for the next 2 days, but I'm just going to get something cleared up because I've been informed that there is another big event happening today. So please rest assured that if you do want to watch the football, we are going to be playing it, yes, Simon, right here on this massive screen behind us. So you can get your lunch, you can bring it back, and you can watch some football. And I think after this morning's speeches, there's quite a few of us who are going to be keeping a very close eye on Sterling. Thanks, Pete. So getting back to business, over the next 2 days, you'll be hearing from some of the leading thinkers around the UK, from politics, business, and much, much more. And I don't think that I'm giving away too much by saying we're going to be talking a lot about growth, how to plan for it, how to remove barriers to it, and how to go for growth. We at the CBI have been talking about pretty much nothing else for the last 2 years, so this will come as no surprise. With all the challenges we're facing, it has never been more important. And finally, almost all of our sessions have time for questions, so make sure you start thinking about those now. Without further ado, let's get started. I would like to welcome onto the stage the CBI's very own Mr. Growth, our Director General, Tony Danker.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the fabulous city of Birmingham. Today some people from Birmingham. Anybody else from the Midlands? Yeah, okay. That's the end of the sort of Christmas fun, I'm afraid. Look, today we are going to bring you television. We're going to bring you economic vision, but we just couldn't bring you Eurovision. Sorry, that went to Liverpool. But what a city and what a region. Still buzzing from the summer's Olympic Games. The Midlands is home to some of the UK's most successful firms and cutting-edge industries. And I'm thrilled that we'll be joined later by the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, a man who has not only brought real leadership to this city, but also in his prior job, he always paid his CBI invoice on time. Let that be a lesson to everybody in this room, the greatness you get from doing so. Look, we've got a packed few days ahead of us, as Simon said, with business experts to inform us, political leaders to inspire us, and an England World Cup to remind us that it's always the hope that kills. But don't worry, we can all be Wales fans later. Now, this year I'm also joined by Brian McBride, the CBI's new president, attending his first annual conference in the role. Now, he may be a Scotland supporter, and I may be a Northern Irishman, but we're hoping. Now, this year I'm also joined by Brian McBride, the CBI's new president, attending his first annual conference in the role. Now, he may be Keir Starmer. This morning, we're really delighted to have the Prime Minister with us. And I know I speak for many of you when I say how much I admired the way Rishi Sunak stood by his beliefs this summer despite the political cost. And it's a trait that we saw working with him as Chancellor. He is a man of integrity and conviction. And in our time working together, I always found him to be warm, to be frank, and to be a genuine partner for business in government. And he takes the role at a most challenging time. And while we won't always agree with him, we will always support his endeavour to first stabilise and then to grow our economy. So it's a pleasure to be the warm-up act for the Prime Minister this morning. I also want to thank our strategic partners, Accenture and Hayes, whose long-standing collaboration and wisdom we value greatly. They keep coming back for more every year, despite Peppa Pig, and we love having them. And I also want to thank our other corporate partners, Phoenix Group, Related Argent, Shell, and Visa. We are incredibly grateful for their support, not just as sponsors, but as members. All of these businesses, and many of you in the room, have a great story to tell about the potential and the transformation of the UK economy. Now, we come together once more in extraordinary times. Britain is in the middle of stagflation, rocketing inflation and negative growth, for the first time that probably most of us in this room can remember. Now, we know how to fight inflation, right? And we know how to fight recession. But we don't really know how to fight them together. And the predictable reaction when we confront stagflation is to choose which evil is worse. But that just leads to different kinds of problem. If you ignore inflation to get growth going, we've seen what happens. You get immediate trauma. But if you ignore growth to get inflation down, you get prolonged pain. And I just reject the idea that you have to choose. I say you daren't choose. Aggressively getting inflation down is the right thing to do, especially after the market's response to the mini-budget. Market stability is a precondition to growth. That's what all of you told me these past few weeks. And I pay tribute to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor for taking the tough choices needed to achieve it. But what about growth? The painful reality about growth is that it can't be stimulated overnight. That's what the mini-budget got wrong, right? Across-the-board tax cuts, immediate demand stimulus. It was relying on the old British strength, consumption, at the expense of the perennial British weakness, investment. And it gave growth a bad name. But growth is good. Growth is a precondition to a stable society. Without growth, the NHS gets worse, not better. Without growth, people's lives get worse, not better. And without growth, we lack the resources we need to transform ourselves to a zero-carbon world. Yet Britain's had 15 years of low growth and flatlining productivity, and we cannot afford a repeat of that. To the Chancellor's credit, he does know the importance of growth, and last week he made some incredibly welcome announcements. First, on business rates relief, something we've been campaigning on since the 16th century. And it didn't take us that long. And he's staying the course on vital infrastructure, from Sizewell C, HS2, East-West Rail, and Northern Powerhouse Rail. But you know, even with these projects, the OBR's forecast concluded that the statement will not alter Britain's trend growth of 1.7%. Trend growth, if you don't know what it is a statement of the true growth rate of an economy without the variations of inflation. And not only has the OBR not changed its assessment of our trend growth since March, lower forecasts for investment, lower forecasts for productivity are dragging us down. In fact, when you look at the data, the only thing holding it up, actually, is higher hours worked due to higher immigration. Now, you know, people are arguing against immigration, but it's the only thing that's increased our growth potential since March. Look, if you want to talk about growth, you have to remember mathematically it's very simple, right? GDP growth is a multiplier of two factors, people and their productivity. And let's be honest, we don't have the people we need, nor do we have the productivity. People I'll return to in a minute. But as for productivity, it is something that I have worked on my whole adult life. And you know, I've rarely seen a better prospectus for what we need than the Prime Minister's own May's lecture earlier this year. His central thesis, that without stimulating investment in capital, people, and ideas, we won't improve productivity. Well, the Prime Minister was right. But these proposals did not come to fruition in last week's plan. Look, I don't think I'm going to need to work hard to convince any of you in this room that we need to go for growth. But we all need to consider a very new reality. When fiscal policy is tight, and it must be, when monetary policy is tight, and it must be, how do you get the economy growing again? That is the central question of British economics and politics now for the next 2 years. Look, it's a hard one. And if I'm honest, it might take us all some time to get the answer right. Might take sitting around the Christmas campfire with a bit of sherry before we can really start to reflect on how to do this. But I thought I'd have a go by laying out a few ideas this morning. You know, in May 2021, the CBI set out a vision for the UK economy. I hope you remember it. It had as its destination a more competitive, dynamic, and future-focused economy. Now, achieving all that without the boost of public finance requires fresh thinking these next 5 years. As I said, we're out of road on both fiscal and monetary support, so we have to find a new avenue round. I believe there's 3 ways to do it, 3 imperatives. One of them is for everybody in this room. The others are for Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, and the politicians. The first is greater business ingenuity, right? We are the ones who'll get this done. We in this room. You guys, entrepreneurs, business owners, growing businesses, multinationals. In the past 2 years, you have shown more resilience, imagination, bravery, and agility than ever. And the bad news is, you cannot take a break. Greater business ingenuity has to become the new normal for UK PLC. But second, we need government to be the great unlocker of private sector investment. You, the government, are the market mover. You, the government, direct the flow of traffic. The tax incentives you set determine where businesses invest. The risks you underwrite actually create new markets. If we have less public money to invest, then we need a treasury obsessed with stimulating private sector investment. And third, we need government to set pro-growth rules, not anti-growth barriers. You, the government, decide what we regulate and what we don't. You decide the skills we import or don't. You decide where we build or where we don't. You decide who we trade with and who we don't. Today, let's be honest, none of those rules really work for growth. Because politicians were able to rely on fiscal firepower, they didn't have to make those tough choices. Well, they can't be avoided any longer. Let me first come back to business ingenuity. This is the bit between all of us, right? Let me tell you why you should invest. Right now, UK PLC has not begun to realise the £700 billion in prizes that we identified for 2030 in our landmark vision last year. Seize the moment. Let me give you some of the examples, just in case you forgot. Take decarbonisation, where the UK can genuinely be the winner in the global race to net zero. We can genuinely be market leaders in green tech and clean energy, and we can be the global centre for sustainable finance. Or innovation, where the UK can push what we've seen in the last couple of years, which is a lead in science and technology, with increased global share for UK fintech, for example, or leveraging our domestic AI expertise. On trade, there is so much untapped export revenue for us by pressing our advantages in the high-growth global markets. In regions and nations, we can win global share by playing to the distinctive strengths of every region and every part of the UK. We think, as you know, the path to this is clusters, something I'm delighted to say the Chancellor got behind last week. When it comes to workforce, we are all getting, are we not, really serious about talent, from recruitment and retention to training, and we'll be talking about that more today. And in health, employers are a new front line in physical and mental well-being, and we have the potential to grow life sciences and wellness sectors massively. Now, this is the growth potential of Britain. 6 prizes, still very much in our reach. And last year we saw it in the statistics. Well, this year we've seen it in your stories. There is so much to play for. Now, the second imperative is for government. Unlocking private sector investment. You know, the government spends £1 trillion per year Now, I'd love it to spend 20 billion more with a higher return. In fact, I have some plans, but the nice man Jeremy said no. But still, it's 1 trillion pounds a year. And there are still massive choices for government to make with that spending. The first choice is about the principles of business taxation. When the Prime Minister, as Chancellor, told me that he was announcing the super deduction alongside the increase in corporation tax, the principle was very clear. If you, as a firm, choose to invest less and make a bigger profit, that is your choice, but you'll pay more tax. If you choose instead to invest in people, capital, ideas, then you'll pay less. You know, corporation tax rates will jump 6 points overnight in April, but now without the incentives. But that principle should be staying the same. Our analysis shows us that a permanent full allowances regime alongside that jump would unlock an extra £50 billion in capital investment every year by the end of the decade. And the second choice here is for the government to start using their balance sheet to crowd in private sector investment. I'm not talking about government picking winners. I'm talking about the government making markets, like they did in offshore wind. It was private sector ingenuity and skills and money that built the industry, but it took the government to put in place the finance models, like contracts for difference, and the investment bodies to make this a highly investable market. And we can do it again in sustainable aviation fuels, in hydrogen. You see, this is the power of government as a market mover, seeing the market, sharing the risk, and creating investable propositions. The third imperative is the government setting pro-growth rules. Our politicians make anti-growth choices every day in pursuit of other legitimate political goals, and I respect that. But when we confront stagflation and its massive impact on the cost of living, I think it's time to kick the tires on those political choices. Let me give you some examples. Immigration. Let's be honest with people. Our labor shortages are vast. Now, we've lost hundreds of thousands of people to economic inactivity post-COVID. And anyone who thinks they'll all be back any day now with the NHS under this kind of pressure is kidding themselves. Secondly, we don't have enough Brits to go around for the vacancies that exist, let alone having a skill mismatch in any case. And third, those who argue automation can step in to do all the jobs are just being unrealistic. So let's be practical. Let's have a new deal on immigration. We have economic migration in the areas where we aren't going to get the people or the skills at home anytime soon. In return, we make those visas fixed term. And let's agree a skills policy that works to fill these roles in the medium term. I want a shortage occupation list that not only goes to the Minister of Immigration, it goes to the Secretary of State for Education. And it goes to all of us to make sure we partner with the Ministry for Education on training budgets. Let me give you another political example, regulation. I know that some conservative politicians today feel that this issue is all the fault of Europe. But you know, the biggest regulatory barriers facing business today are based on British laws, created by a British Parliament and implemented by British regulators. And the regulatory regime today is gold-plated and bureaucratic. It's not outcomes-based, it's rules-based. It's not proportionate. It winds us all up in an overzealous process of enforcement. And too many regulators still think it's somebody else's job to worry about growth and investment. Here's another favorite, planning. The UK planning system should be a key economic enabler, helping us to get the essential infrastructure and major projects required. And yet in Britain today, planning is broken. We've been saying it for years, and it's gotten worse. Slow, fragmented, rife with local politics. And if we don't do it now, then when are we ever going to change it? And finally, trade. Right now, our trade as a percentage of GDP is the lowest in the G7. Now, Boris Johnson achieved a deal with the EU that allows us to continue to trade tariff-free, quota-free with our biggest trading partner. There's some good stuff in there, currently locked up, because still we argue over the Northern Ireland Protocol, both sides. Still we argue over sovereignty. So I say to both sides, get round the table, do the deal, and unlock the trade and cooperation agreement. And I say to Brexiteers, the best guarantor of Brexit is an economy that grows, and its biggest risk is one that doesn't. Now, I know that some of these things won't be that popular with the politicians. But while I have no problem with government taking tough choices to bring stability, I want them to also take tough choices to bring growth. So look, this is day one of a discussion we're going to be having for the next 2 years, friends. How the UK grows when our fiscal and monetary policy shrinks. Government may not have new money, but they do have lots of choices. And until they take them, we'll keep pushing. And you, our members, the wealth creators, who pay the salaries, make the cars, build the wind turbines, finance the loans, sell the food, print the textbooks, we also ask you to build on the greater resilience you found in the pandemic, to build on the business confidence you've had these 2 years and still have, to extend your ingenuity for growth, just like you did 2 years ago when the economy closed down. Because no one ever got up a hill by taking their foot off the accelerator. This isn't a moment to fear, it's a moment to seize. Growth gives everyone a path out of difficult times, and it is what will make the UK the most competitive, dynamic, and future-focused economy that we want it to be. The CBI will be with you every step of the way. So let's go for growth together. Thanks very much indeed.
It's tough. Again. Energy costs, inflation, interest rates, politics. You wouldn't be human if you didn't pause, hesitate. But no one got up a hill by taking the foot off the accelerator. And against all the odds, you've got some momentum. Demand's not bad. There are still good things to invest in. New services, new tech, new customers. This isn't a moment to fear. It's a moment to seize. You'll have to be resilient, fit enough. But if you're as good as we think you are, you can grow. Growth lifts everyone. It keeps everyone in good shape, gives us all a path out of difficult times. So let's go for growth, together.
Okay, folks, it now gives me enormous pleasure to welcome back to the CBI, now with a promotion, the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Rishi Sunak. Brilliant to have you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Very good to see you. It's all yours.
Thank you. Well, Tony, let me start by saying thank you to you and your team. The CBI is a valued institution in this country and a powerful voice for business. And let me thank all of you, because I know things are tough right now. You rightly want to know what you can expect from me. You saw what mattered to me as Chancellor with policies like furlough, acting with empathy in the national interest. Above all, being bold, decisive, and radical. Now, let me tell you what I want to do as Prime Minister. I said on the steps of Downing Street that I would put stability and confidence at the heart of this government's agenda. And last week, we did that with a plan to grip inflation and balance the books. I said I would bring fairness and compassion to help the most vulnerable. And we've done that too, not just with record increases in pensions and welfare and help for people's energy bills, but by controlling inflation. Because the best way to help people is by stopping mortgages, rents, and food prices from spiraling out of control. Re-establishing stability is the critical first step. But there's so much more we need to do. I'm not just here to solve problems. I want to build a better country where we get inflation down and grow the economy, where we cut NHS waiting times and improve the quality of care, and where we invest more in schools and give every child a world-class education. And critical to achieving all this is innovation. That's my theme today, and a defining focus of this government. I sometimes worry that when people hear the word innovation, all they think of are the latest gadgets, a smarter watch, better TV, or faster car. But to me, innovation is much more about new ideas, new ways of doing things that drive economic and social progress, the product of creativity and ingenuity, and what Roosevelt called bold, persistent experimentation. I want to lead a country where that mindset and that culture of innovation permeates every aspect of what we do, where it's at the heart of our economic policy and at the heart of our vision for public services. The question is, how do we do that? First, we need to harness innovation to drive economic growth. Second, we need to embed innovation in our public services, especially our NHS. Third, we need to teach people the skills to become great innovators. First, growth. Now, Tony, you rightly challenge us to be ambitious for growth. Well, there's one factor above all that drives growth. Over the last 50 years, innovation was responsible for around half of the UK's productivity increases. But the rate of increase has slowed significantly since the financial crisis. This difference explains almost all our productivity gap with the United States. So how do we fire up the innovation engine? Well, we believe that the very act of creativity and exploration is itself a reward. So it starts with government investment in basic science and research. In a challenging time, when we are making difficult decisions on public spending, in last week's autumn statement, we protected the budget for research and development. £20 billion, almost a fifth of our entire capital budget, the highest level of R&D this country has ever seen. And we're investing in high-risk, high-reward research with the new Advanced Research and Invention Agency. But more important than what government does is what you do. It's private sector innovations that really drive growth. Now, you'd expect me to say that. I'm a conservative, but it's true. And that's why the autumn statement cut taxes to encourage larger companies to do more research and development. It's why we want to allow businesses to claim R&D tax relief on pure maths and cloud computing. And it's why we're absolutely committed to using our new Brexit freedoms to create the most pro-innovation regulatory environment in the world, in sectors like life sciences, financial services, AI, and data. But any credible strategy also needs to support fast-growing businesses, those firms disproportionately responsible for our future growth, turning million-pound businesses into billion-pound businesses, and turning billion-pound businesses into £10 billion companies. We'll create good, well-paid jobs for the British people. But too often, those firms can't access the finance they need. That's why we're radically reforming the regulation of our insurance and pension sectors, as well as our listing rules, to release a flood of new funding for exciting, innovative businesses. And we'll need to go further. But this isn't just about what large businesses and financial markets can do. We want to support small businesses to innovate too. on every high street, in every market town, every day. We rely on brilliant local businesses, from the greengrocer to the dry cleaner to the local plumber. We should be ambitious for their future too. The real prize is supporting them to innovate. And that's exactly what we're doing with new initiatives like Help to Grow and Made Smarter. So make no mistake, our most pressing task when it comes to growth is stability and controlling inflation. But that will never be the limit of our ambition. The more we innovate, the more we will grow, and we have a plan for both. Now, second, we also need to create a culture of innovation in our public services. Now, I grew up in an NHS family. It's in my blood. And as your Prime Minister, I will always protect an NHS free at the point of use. And that's why, in a budget where we had to make savings overall, we didn't cut the funding for health and social care, we increased it by £8 billion. So let no one ever doubt our commitment to the brilliant men and women who work in our NHS. But our ambition for our country's most important public service cannot be measured solely by the money we spend, but by the quality of care every patient receives. We all want it to be easier for people to see their family GP. We don't want our loved ones waiting so long for ambulances or for the operations they need. But better care requires innovation. Now, in part, that means new drugs and new technologies. And this country should be proud of how we are leading the way, not just with the extraordinary COVID vaccine, but with robots assisting surgery, doctors being trained with virtual reality headsets, and drones transporting prescription medicines to patients in remote locations. And medical technologies like these are only the most visible form of innovation. But we also need to radically innovate how we do things. That's how we'll really improve the quality and speed of care and make the money we invest in the NHS go further. To do that, we're opening community diagnostic centres to deliver millions more tests, checks and scans close to home and without having to arrange multiple appointments. And our new elective surgical hubs will offer hundreds of thousands of patients quicker access to the most common procedures. But we need to go further still. We want to give patients genuine choice about where and when to access care. And those choices need to be informed by radical transparency about the performance of our healthcare system. We're also making sure the NHS has the workforce it needs for the future, with the right number of doctors and nurses in the right places, as well as thinking creatively about what new roles and capabilities we need in the healthcare workforce of the future. When it comes to the NHS, we all share the same ambition to give everybody in the country the best possible care, free at the point of use. But to deliver it, we need to be bold and radical in challenging conventional wisdom, and that's what we will do. Now, third, there can be no innovation unless people have the skills to innovate. That starts with our schools. So last week, we announced an extra £2 billion in each of the next 2 years. But funding is not enough. There is no responsibility as Prime Minister that I feel more deeply than how we develop a truly world-class education system, giving every child in our country the best chance of life and preparing them to enter a rapidly changing world. The Times were right to challenge us about what that looks like. And we are asking ourselves radical, searching questions about the curriculum, because young people need to enter the modern economy equipped with the right knowledge and skills, and about technology, because we want to help children engage and learn better and save teachers time. We also need to end once and for all this mistaken idea that learning is something you finish at 18. So we will also deliver our lifetime skills guarantee to help people of any age retrain and acquire new skills. I believe in the very core of my being that education is the closest thing we have to a silver bullet in public policy. It is the most transformative thing that we can do for our people, something you as employers know all too well. And I am determined to get this right. But to make this country a true island of innovation, we also need to attract the best and the brightest from around the world. So we will unapologetically create one of the world's most attractive visa regimes for entrepreneurs and highly skilled people. And one of the areas we need to be most ambitious is AI, artificial intelligence. Because this isn't just a new technology. It's a general purpose technology, like the invention of the steam engine and the computer chip, with the potential to transform every aspect of our lives. So we cannot allow the world's top AI talent to be drawn to America or China. That's why, building on the AI scholarships and master's conversion courses I instigated as Chancellor, we are launching a new program to identify and attract the world's top 100 young talents on AI. Less build it and they will come, and more let them come and they will build it. But we must be honest with ourselves. Part of the reason we ended the free movement of labor was to rebuild public consent in our immigration system. If we're going to have a system that allows businesses to access the best and brightest from around the world, we need to do more to give the British people trust and confidence that the system works and is fair. That means tackling illegal migration, and that's what I am determined to do. So to conclude, innovation matters. It matters because it creates more jobs, higher wages, and better opportunities for people. It matters because it improves our schools and NHS. And over the long term, by boosting growth and creating more productive public services, innovation is how we will cut taxes for people and businesses. That's why I'm placing innovation at the heart of my governing agenda. And despite the challenges we face, I'm optimistic about the future. Because the golden thread of our national story has always been innovation. The idea that what's yet to be discovered is surely even greater than all that's come before. I want the United Kingdom to be a place of learning, discovery, and imagination, of potential realized and ambition fulfilled. That's how we'll improve the lives of all our people. And as your Prime Minister, that's what I'm going to do. Thank you. Thank you. I think we're going to take some questions from the media. So we start with the BBC.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Simon Jack, BBC News. We know that chronic labour shortages and weak post-Brexit trade are holding economic growth back. You've heard this morning businesses are saying we need looser immigration rules and closer ties with our biggest market, the EU. Are you listening to them?
Well, I think the country's #1 priority right now, when it comes to migration, is tackling illegal migration. It's stopping people coming here illegally on small boats across the channel. Because when people see that happening, it undermines trust in the system. It doesn't seem fair that people are able to break the rules. And that's what I am absolutely determined to fix. Now, I want to be honest, it's not a simple problem to solve. We can't solve it overnight, but I am determined to reduce the number of illegal migrants coming here. We've started making progress on that. My conversations with President Macron enabled us to conclude a new deal with the French to help us better police the Channel, put more people working together with the French in France. But there's more work that we need to do, and the country should be reassured that I will tackle this as one of my highest priorities. And if we're doing that, then I do believe that we can, that it's right to ensure that the United Kingdom is a beacon for the world's best and brightest from around the world. You heard me talk about that in the speech. I want to make sure that we can win the global race for talent. And I'm unapologetic about wanting to deliver an immigration system which is highly competitive for the best and the brightest. And that's what we'll deliver. But I think the most pressing priority right now is tackling illegal migration, and that's what I'm determined to fix. Next, ITV.
Hi, Prime Minister. Harry Horton from ITV News. We've heard the director of the CBI say that there is a shortage of workers at the moment and we need a new deal on immigration. Last Friday, your Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, he said he wants to see the vast majority of trade barriers with the EU removed. How are you going to change our relationship with the EU on legal immigration and on trade in order to boost growth, as so many businesses at this conference say they want to see?
Well, thank you. I think on migration, I'd point back to what I've just said, Harry. But on trade, let me be unequivocal about this. Under my leadership, the United Kingdom will not pursue any relationship with Europe that relies on alignment with EU laws. Now, I voted for Brexit. I believe in Brexit. And I know that Brexit can deliver, and is already delivering, enormous benefits and opportunities for the country. Migration being an immediate one, where we have proper control of our borders and are able to have a conversation with the country about the type of migration that we want and need. Right? We weren't able to do that inside the European Union. At least now we are in control of it. When it comes to trade, it means that we can open up our country to the world's fastest growing markets. I've just got back from the G20 in Indonesia. We're talking about signing CPTPP, where we've got some of the most exciting, fastest growing economies in the world, and we can become a part of that trading bloc. That's a fantastic opportunity for the UK. Or indeed regulation. And you've talked, and Tony's talked about growth. You've heard me talk about innovation. Well, we need regulatory regimes that are fit for the future, that ensure that this country can be leaders in those industries that are going to create the jobs and the growth of the future. And having the regulatory freedom to do that is an important opportunity of Brexit. And that's my agenda, and I'm confident that that agenda is not only right for the country, but can deliver enormous benefit for people up and down the UK in the years to come. Next, The Times.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Alex Ralph from The Times. Given the rise in corporation tax next year, will you commit to increasing investment allowances such as the super deduction scheme, which the likes of the CBI and other business leaders want?
Well, Alex, I completely agree about the importance of unlocking private investment. It's one of the things that's held our country back over the past few decades. And if we want to be serious about driving up growth, then we need to unlock more private investment, not just in R&D that I talked about in my speech, but also in capital. It's something I've spoken about in the past. So that's why I was so pleased that the Chancellor, in spite of the difficult decisions that needed to be made, was able to make permanent the annual investment allowance. Now, that at a very high level of £1 million. Now, what does that mean? That's essentially full expensing for 99% of British businesses. There's nothing like that I think exists in almost any other advanced economy. It makes it incredibly easy and tax efficient for companies to invest in new equipment, new machinery, new plant that can drive up our growth, drive up our productivity. And that's why it was right that the Chancellor did that. But it's also right that we continue to look at that and see that we do everything we can, whether it's through the tax system or otherwise, to support all of you to keep making investment in the future growth of our country. And next, Bloomberg.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Lizzie Burden, Bloomberg. Over and over, we hear critical voices coming from the business community about the Conservative government's performance. Are you still prepared to say explicitly that the Conservatives are the party of business?
Lizzie, thank you. Yes, unequivocally. Unequivocally, and you heard it in my speech. It's important that government creates the conditions for stability, for making sure that we tackle inflation. But that's just the foundation. Now, all of us collectively need to build on that foundation And what my role is, what the government's role is to ensure that we can unlock all of the things that we want you to do and what you all want to do, whether that's investing more in new machinery and equipment and automation, whether it's investing in R&D to create the products and services of the future, right? Expanding into new markets. Ultimately, it's business that creates the wealth, the jobs that this country needs. It's not government that does that. And I think you've seen from my track record as Chancellor that I stood by all of you. I stood by business because I knew how important it was to our country. I knew how important it was to safeguarding people's jobs and their livelihoods. And that's my track record as your Chancellor. And you can rest assured that as your Prime Minister, I will continue to build on that legacy and ensure that we make this country one of the most exciting, dynamic places for businesses, small and large, anywhere in the world. That's my ambition. That's what I want to deliver for you. And I think we made a very good start on that last week. But there's lots more that we can do.
Thanks, Prime Minister. We are going to have a few business questions. I've stolen the first one. I'm really sorry. I was praising your May's lecture earlier this year. And in it, you talked about the UK not having a competitive tax regime compared to our competitors on innovation, skills, and capital allowances. Thanks for stealing that question, Alex. Tell me, do you think we now have that competitive regime for incentivizing skills, innovation, and investment, or is there more to do?
Well, those are exactly the right three areas to focus on, and thank you for your kind words about the May's lecture, Tony. But I talked about capital, people, and ideas, and I think many of you think about your businesses in a similar way. And it's right that our tax regime, but also our regulatory regime, supports all of you in delivering in those three areas. So we're definitely making progress. As we just talked about the AIA, full expensing for 98, 99% of UK businesses, £1 million, permanent. Nothing like that exists anywhere else as far as we can tell. Enormous support for the vast majority of businesses in this country to invest more. I think that is not just competitive, it's probably the most competitive tax regime for investment you can find. You talked about R&D. The Chancellor increased the research and development expenditure credit, the tax relief for large company R&D, significantly in the autumn statement, because, as you know, innovation drives future growth and productivity. But it's not enough just to increase the rate. We want to make sure that our tax regime keeps up with the way that all of you actually conduct research. And what we'd heard from life sciences companies, that there's more investment in cloud computing, in data, to do drug discovery. That wasn't covered by our regime. So we now want to make sure that our regime does cover that. Again, it's something that the vast majority of other countries haven't done yet. So I think it gives you the confidence you need in all of you that we take this seriously and we'll keep delivering it. But there's always more to do, right? This budget, or this autumn statement, there was a first step. The precondition is stability and tackling inflation. But we didn't stop there even last week. We started to deliver on a longer-term ambition to make sure that this is, as I said, the most attractive place for all of you to invest in capital and people and ideas anywhere in the world. And I'm highly confident that we can deliver that.
And that's a powerful message for everybody. Now, we have 3 questions that have come in from members, and we wanted to pick the ones that were about innovation, your theme. So, Claire, where's Claire? Claire Barkley, who's the UK MD of Microsoft. Claire, mic coming to you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Prime Minister. You set out a vision to be a global science and technology superpower. What would your message be to all the businesses in the room, and many of them are investing very heavily in digital and technology, as well as the role that the public sector plays in accelerating that, and what can we collectively do together?
Well, thank you, Claire, and thanks for everything that Microsoft does, I think in particular on apprenticeships, which I know well, and I think that's an enormous example for many to look at. I think probably 3 things, if I may. I think 3 things I'd ask of you and everyone else. The first is to continue investing in R&D, because that's something where we need to do a better job of, right? Ultimately, it's you, it's free enterprise, it's the private sector that drive growth, and I think we need to do a better job of investing in R&D. The government's going to do its bit, but that's not sufficient. We need all of you to keep investing in innovation and prioritizing it in the way that we have. So that's the first thing. The second thing is around regulation. Now, I think the CBI talked about the idea of an Office for Future Regulation, but we need your ideas. So when it comes to the industries of the future, where you're all working, you're going to be far faster than someone sitting in Whitehall to see where the new barriers are or where the regulations aren't keeping pace with what you're trying to do. And so you need to come to me, you need to come to the Chancellor and the Business Secretary and say, okay, this over here in data, this over here in clinical trials, this over here in AI regulation, this over here in fintech, and whatever it might be. We can't, we will try and do it, but ultimately you're going to know it better and faster than we ever will. So please do come to us with those specific ideas about how to create, as I said, the most innovation-friendly, future-focused regulatory regime in the world, because that's what we want to deliver for you. And then the third thing is on talent. I think when I talk to all of you, the number one thing you all talk to me about is talent, is how do we get access to the skilled people we need. And obviously, LinkedIn is a great place to look at that. But what I need from you is the specific areas, the pinch points that are holding our growth back. I think it's kind of generic to say, well, we have pressure in IT jobs, right? But I need to know more specifically. It's in cloud computing. It's in data analytics. These are the specific things we need. And here, by the way, is the type of qualification we need to fix it, right? We can do a 1-year conversion course or a 3-month skills boot camp, and then we can work in partnership together to invest in people and make sure that we fill the specific skills gaps that are holding you and the country back. And I think we've started that conversation, but I'd like to carry it on and make sure we deliver on it.
I think the Prime Minister's just launched the next CBI consultation. So answers, please, on a postcard to me. We'll give them to the PM. Right, James Roth is the CEO of Wincanton. James, come on in.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Prime Minister. So we're the largest UK-owned logistics service provider, and we have quite a lot of warehouses around the country. And in common with a lot of the UK economy, we have a productivity issue, exacerbated by labour shortages and spiralling labour cost inflation. And one of the main solutions to that is to automate more robotics working alongside our people. But when we look for partners to work with to develop those solutions, we mostly have to look overseas, particularly when it comes to the hardware. What I'm interested in is how can we partner better with government to help develop that sector onshore so that there's more of a provision and we can work better in that way?
That's excellent question, and goes to the heart of some of the questions before about what's the right balance between investment and productivity and migration. Now, look, I think there are some really fantastic examples. Your business is one. Right now at Lincoln University, the government's funding, I think, R&D, working in partnership with others to create more automation in fruit picking, which has been an area of challenge in the past. Astra at the moment are piloting use of robotics in their factories, and one of my kind of most interesting visits as Chancellor was to a lighting factory in the northeast, where they had taken out a lot of the human action when it comes to forklift trucks in their warehouse, replaced it all with robotics. And not only was that great for productivity, it was great for quality of output and mistakes, and great for safety of workers. So I think it shows the promise of what you can do when you get this right. And when I was talking to them about, well, this is great, how do we spread this across the country? It was interesting. The thing that they focused most on was the kind of management experience with that type of technology. And the person I was speaking to had been trained, unsurprisingly, by the Japanese in lean manufacturing techniques up in one of the other plants in the northeast. But that's why spreading best practice across the UK through innovations that Tony has championed, like Made Smarter, for example, and just making sure that our businesses have the skills they need to adopt that type of technology, I think is a big part of the answer where we need to do more. Also, it's about making sure the regime for investment is attractive, and that's why the AIA, as talked about at the annual investment allowance, full expensing for capital investment for 98% of businesses, and of course, over time, it would be nice to be able to do more. That's the other piece of the puzzle that we need to get right. And then lastly is the regulatory side. And that's where, again, I'm reliant on you to say, we'd love to do this thing, here's the block, can we flex it or change it? And again, we're open to doing all of those three things, because I think your point is right. If we can get that right with more robotics and automation, then we can drive up productivity, it reduces some of the pressure on labor, creates good jobs for people, and it's something that we lag behind in. I think there was a study from the Robotics Federation or whoever it was a couple of years ago, which showed that we under-index for the amount of automation and robotics, even when you control for the sectoral mix of our economy. So that, to me, is actually low-hanging fruit when we talk about how do we drive up growth. We've got an opportunity there to do it and to